Hello, welcome back to Breakfast Central. This morning, we have a very important conversation coming up next. We're spotlighting a troubling development in Nigeria's fiscal governance. For the first time in 15 years, yes, that's a decade and 5 years, the Budget Office of the Federation has failed to publish its quarterly budget implementation report.
This quarterly budget implementation report tells us how government revenue is performing, how funds are being spent, and whether ministries are meeting their targets. It's the fiscal scorecard of the nation.
Well, without it, Nigerians are left in the dark. Are we actually overspending? Do you know? Are we underperforming? Do you know? Or are funds being diverted? We simply really don't know. So this isn't just a bureaucratic oversight. It's actually a breach of public trust in one way or the other if you look at it, because the citizens deserve to know. These reports are constitutional requirements and a cornerstone of transparency. So why the silence? Well, to talk about this, we do have someone who's been tracking this very closely, Nigeria's fiscal accountability, especially for years. We have with us the Group Head, Research and Policy Advisory of BudgIT, Mr. Vahyala Kwaga. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Good morning, team. It's a pleasure to be here as always.
All right. The Fiscal Responsibility Act mandates quarterly reporting. Now we've seen that it's not actually what it is. Where do we go from here? Is this not a violation of this act?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely a violation. And it's interesting when you look at the provisions of the act regarding dissemination and publication. In fact, if you go through the act thoroughly, you will notice something very curious and interesting. Despite the clear directives and mandates for disclosure, for dissemination, for reporting, for collation of information, there is not one single penalty or consequence for non-compliance. So the Fiscal Responsibility Act is, by and large, a toothless bulldog. And this was by design. The framers of this act, according to very reliable sources who are involved in the drafting of this piece of legislation, noted that the parliamentarians at that time extracted any form of penalty or consequence for non-compliance of these provisions. And for me, the strength, the responsibility of any government is in its ability to be held by its own laws. So where you have a law that may not have a consequence, where a government is able to keep itself accountable and obey those laws, I mean, that is the highest form of responsibility. That is the highest form of regard for the principles of the rule of law. So if the government is unable to do so, I guess your conclusion is as good as mine.
Now, Mr. Kwaga, for 15 years, Nigerians have come to rely on these reports as a kind of fiscal x-ray of the country. Now we're in the dark. We're kind of in the dark because they haven't published it. From where you sit, what does this silence say about the government's attitude to transparency?
So, I mean, it hasn't been entirely silent. We have had presentations by the Minister for Finance and the Director General of the Budget Office of the Federation, here and there in news media, print and television. But I worry for the type of disposition that shows. You are literally moving from the publication of comprehensive documents that even had their issues, in terms of disaggregation, in terms of them being machine readable, in terms of them coming as at when due and in a timely manner, to the outright non-publishing of these documents. And I think it's very telling for an administration that has claimed that it is making more revenue. I mean, I think the obvious thing to do would be to provide the numbers, to provide the figures, to provide the documentation that shows that this is actually where we are for this particular period. And when you look or you think about the implications of this non-publishing towards the disposition it shows to foreign investors, for instance, anyone who wants to bring their money into a country and sees that, oh, the government itself is, somewhat dismissive, not very concerned about publishing its own books, struggling to understand the kind of reaction that would elicit from a foreign investor. Perhaps, investors may not bother so much, but I think it's important for we in the country, we the citizens, civil society, the media, academia, think tanks, would want to know. We deserve a right to know. As you said in your opener, there's a constitutional mandate for the government to be transparent. So where it does not even give you the information in a tangible form, how then can you hold it accountable? It would be very difficult to do so. And I'm sure that the government knows this and understands this, but I wonder how they intend to provide any justifiable response. I mean, there are some comments I'll make a little later about the running of concurrent budgets and the implication that has as well. But this all ties into a seeming disinterest to be held accountable in any shape or form.
Do we perhaps know what might be the reason why this report wasn't made public? And will there be ever any excuse or reason that might, suffice for this omission?
There haven't been any reasons given. Our organization wrote a couple of months ago to the Budget Office of the Federation, and we were seeking, among other things, deeper collaboration, deeper engagement, and access to documentation. And this letter was written sometime early this year. And as at that time, there were still at least 2 pending budget implementation reports for the Federation. And the response we got was, everything you want is online. I mean, that was demonstrably false. But the Budget Office, in its terse response, did not deem it fit to provide an elaborate explanation. That may be an indication of the disposition of this government towards civil society. I will say that in other areas, the government is extending a hand towards forging a proper relationship with civil society. But in this regard, as it regards the publication of fiscal information, there does not seem to be any form of urgency. There does not seem to be any form of accountability or willingness to be open and speak frankly and speak candidly to the very Nigerians that they are meant to serve. I mean, off the top of my head, could it be that the Budget Office of the Federation needs its office to be separated from the Budget Office of the federal government? So I want viewers to understand that he's playing a dual role. That office occupies dual roles. He's the Director General of the Budget Office of the Federation, that's the federal government and the subnationals, and for the federal government as well. There have been moves in the past to separate that office, to create a separate office for the Budget Office of the Federation and a separate office for the Budget Office of the federal government. These are things that may perhaps reduce the workload if that is the reason why such documentation has not been published. But it would stand to reason that in Buhari's administration, his budget office published at the very least 3 budget implementation reports in a fiscal year. I mean, the norm is for 4, 1 for every quarter, but there were not less than 3 published. So has the workload reduced? Has it increased? We do not know. Is the budget office willing to speak to civil society organizations in Nigeria? From our experience, the answer is no. Perhaps other organizations may have better success at getting an answer, but we have not gotten anything really substantial since we asked.
So, there's this worry, so far so good. I mean, if it's not been published, the fear for Nigerians now will be that will it in any way affect maybe the next administration that will come after the current one in terms of taking a look at exactly what Nigeria has spent in the past 15 years and how it will impact heavily on every single individual? And why is this so important for Nigerians to actually know? Because what is the repercussion, the impact this will have on every single Nigerian who's watching now?
So it's possible that the next administration may be buoyed by this neglect, non-compliance, casual indifference towards something that should be the cornerstone of our public financial management reporting. And the sad thing about Nigeria is we tend not to improve. Things seem to get worse all the time. I mean, you're coming from regular publication of budget implementation reports. You're coming from regular engagements with the public. If your viewers recall, the previous administrations, I know very clearly, the Buhari administration's Minister for Budget and Planning and DG Budget Office regularly engage civil society, regularly engage the media in presentations, in workshops, in engagements, and it has literally been the opposite. But of course, in many instances, there are no repercussions for such a disposition. Most of the government officials involved do not see themselves as accountable to citizens, rather to the president. And in his defense, the president may simply be overwhelmed or have too much to do or too much to focus on, that he cannot focus on 1,001 things. We need to see a demonstration of leadership. We need to see a demonstration of the willingness to engage with your constituents, Nigerians. I do not think, and I'm sure I'm speaking for the entire civil society when I say that is not too much to ask. It is not too much to ask for the Budget Office of the Federation to simply do its job. That's not too much to ask. So I would say that the implication of this, or what it means, is that we are not clear as to how well money has been spent by the government. The government's principal aim is the security of lives and property, the establishment or the enhancement of the economy to make it more productive, to make it flourish for the benefit of Nigerians. And it does that by spending money. It needs to let us know how well, how efficient, how effective that spending has been, so we can put pressure on the government to prioritize other areas that need to be prioritized. The budget implementation reports show how well government money, government spending has led towards the delivery of goods and services, which is the mandate of the government. It shows how well, how efficient it has transferred money within itself. And in your opener, you mentioned these show how well the government has transferred monies via statutory allocations to MDAs, etc., capital expenditure in particular. And for an administration that's just hit the 2-year mark, I think a couple of months ago, I beg your pardon, it should have been a crowning moment for them to show that, hey, this is where we have arrived. This is what we have achieved with the resources available to us. Saying it in random events, a couple or a few lines or sentences on the revenue you've been able to generate or the expenditure you've been able to achieve does not do justice to the comprehensiveness in a typical budget implementation report. And I think it's all the more telling that the states, by and large, have consistently published budget implementation reports. My organization measures that, in an entire document. It's called the State Fiscal Transparency League. And one of the indicators that makes up our index is the publishing of quarterly BIRs. And by and large, states do that. Even when administrations change, we rank the states and we score them on their timeliness, on the comprehensiveness of those reports. So it is inconceivable that the federal government, is unable to do so and provides no explanation, provides no justification for something that is quite frankly, a violation of its own established laws. But I guess, that the reasons for that being the case, we delve into reasons of impunity. And I think you might need a political scientist to speak, to do justice to that.
So what would then be the next steps? You mentioned requesting for this information and being told that it's online. And, BudgIT has been a very firm advocate for, public display of information, fiscal information. So what would be the next steps? How can organizations like BudgIT and other civil society organizations hold the government to account to ensure that this happens? And what can the everyday Nigerian citizen do? What role can they play?
To ensure that this is not...
So BudgIT will continue.
It doesn't become the new normal, because you might just be setting precedents. Yeah.
Yeah, so BudgIT will continue to put pressure on the Budget Office, will continue to write letters, will continue to seek audience and engagement with them. Hopefully, our publication of a press release, you can check it out on our Twitter handle a few hours ago, will get to the right ears. We're also going to reach out to the Minister of Finance, who is responsible for mandating the Budget Office of the Federation to carry out this duty. Would also use our networks to reach out to the National Assembly. The Public Accounts Committee in the recent months has been very, very impactful regarding Nigeria's public financial management ecosystem. And I think the PAC, headed by Bamidele Salam, has done pretty well, in audit, in review of government finances, in compelling MDAs, to report. And I think it was just the day before yesterday, his committee has started the process of hearings for MDAs that have been petitioned by civil society organizations, BudgIT being one of them, regarding infractions that they have carried out. So, we see bright spots in the National Assembly. We see leadership and a demonstration of leadership in the National Assembly that we believe we can ride on. And perhaps they can, as their mandate presupposes, oversight, they can put pressure on the executive to publish this documentation. Would also still appeal, through the Open Government Partnership, that lines of communication be strengthened and that the Ministry of Finance take up this responsibility and discharge it. It is not asking for too much for you to report to Nigerians whom you serve on how well you have spent their money. We are transitioning to a new regime via the tax laws, and Nigerians will be paying more in taxes. So it is incumbent on this administration to begin to put its house in order and publish how well it has been spending money. I'd like to also, chip in that the Open Treasury Portal, which was, again, an initiative of the Buhari administration that warehoused data on daily, monthly, quarterly, and yearly spending of the federal government, has also not been updated since January of 2025. What that platform did was provide basically, up-to-date information on government spending. So every naira that left the government treasury to pay a contractor was published by the federal government. Now, that was done under the administration of late President Buhari. And it is, I think, worrying, perhaps tragic, that the administration of a retired military general has been far more proactive than that of this current administration.
And that's
reasons given to us are...
Yeah, that's worrisome.
Yes, go ahead.
I mean that's very worrisome, to say the least, because if we had all of this and yet we're still stuck, no data to show, no proof on how the monies are going and so on, well, I wonder what would become of this in the next few years to come. But because of our time, I think this is where we'll drop the curtains here and say thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully, we'll get to have you back again so we can look deeper into other issues, just like the RMAF, increasing salaries of some of the, persons in Nigeria,
Public
where many have called them important, the public servants. Thank you so much for joining us, by the way. Thank you for your time.